After my C-section, my surgeon told the anesthesiologist in Mandarin that he'd cut something he shouldn't have. He had no idea I lived in China for 6 years. I was lying in the recovery room after a C-section with my newborn on my chest when I heard my anesthesiologist talking to the surgeon in Mandarin. She's out of it. She won't remember any of this. I lived in Shanghai for 6 years. I understood every word. My body was numb from the waist down and my arms felt like sand, but my mind was razor sharp. The anesthesiologist said, "Did you see how much she bled? That wasn't normal." The surgeon said, "I know. I nicked something I shouldn't have." My stomach dropped even though I couldn't feel it. The anesthesiologist said, "What do you mean?" The surgeon said, "When I was making the incision, I went too deep. I clipped her bladder. I saw it, but I closed her up before it showed on the monitors. I wanted to scream, but my baby was sleeping on my chest, and I couldn't move without disturbing her." The anesthesiologist said, "So what do we do?" The surgeon said nothing. "If we flag it, that's a surgical error on my record. I just got cleared from the last review." The anesthesiologist said, "The last review?" The surgeon said, "Don't worry about that. Bladder nicks sometimes heal on their own. Sometimes." That word sat in my chest like a brick. The anesthesiologist said, "And if it doesn't, then she'll develop symptoms in a few days. Pain, fever, urinary issues. We document it as a postpartum complication. No one questions it after a C-section." My baby stirred, and I held her tighter with the little strength I had. A nurse came in, and I tried to talk, but only a whisper came out. I managed to say something's wrong. She checked my vitals, smiled, and said, "Everything looks great. You're doing wonderful, Mama," and she left. The surgeon waited until the door closed and said in Mandarin, "We need the chart to reflect heavy bleeding during delivery. If anything comes up later, we point to that." The anesthesiologist said, "You want me to alter the anesthesia log?" The surgeon said, "Adjust the blood loss estimate. Write 800 milliliters instead of 400. That way, if she needs a second surgery, we say the complication was from hemorrhaging, not a surgical error." The anesthesiologist said, "This is falsifying records." The surgeon said, "This is protecting both of us. You were in that room. If I go down, you go down with me." Silence. Then she said, "Fine. I'll update it before the shift change." My arms were starting to come back. I could feel my fingers. I tried pressing the call button, but it had slipped off the bed. My baby started crying, and a nurse came in. I whispered, "Please get my husband." She said, "He's in the waiting room. I'll bring him in soon." Then she took my baby to the nursery. I was alone. No baby, no call button, no voice. The surgeon came back with the anesthesiologist. He stood over me and said in Mandarin, "She looks stable. Keep her on the drip another hour. I don't want her too alert before we finish the chart." The anesthesiologist said, "What if her husband asks questions?" We tell him it was routine. Mom and baby are healthy. Send them home in 48 hours. If symptoms show up after discharge, that's her OB's problem, not ours," the anesthesiologist said. "And if she dies from sepsis?" The surgeon paused. "C-section mortality happens. It's tragic, but it's not investigated the same way." My fingers were fully working now. I reached down the side of the bed and found the call button cord. Pulled it up, pressed it. A different nurse came in. I had enough voice now. I looked at her and said, "I need the charge nurse and the patient advocate in this room right now. Do not leave me alone with these two." The surgeon said in English, "She's disoriented from the medication." I looked at him and said in Mandarin, "I heard you tell her to change the blood loss from 400 to 800. I heard you say you clipped my bladder and closed me up before it showed on the monitors. I heard you say if I die, you'd call it C-section mortality." His face collapsed. The anesthesiologist grabbed the counter behind her. I said in English, "Call my husband. Call the patient advocate. And call whoever is in charge of this hospital tonight. I am not dying in this room because 2 doctors wanted clean records. My husband was there in 4 minutes. Patient advocate in 10. Emergency scan confirmed the bladder laceration. I was in surgery again 2 hours later. The surgeon's license was suspended pending investigation. The anesthesiologist was placed on leave. The falsified chart was recovered from the system before the shift change.